Live, and here we go. This is the special intro right here that we're going with. We got Creed and Jen back here in the studio, and we're going to be talking about another trip that we're going to be doing. Creed, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Tony.
Thanks for being here. And, you know, we did a trip, what was it, June this year?
It was June, yeah.
Yeah, so by the time people hear this, it's going to be June last year. So this is going to air the first Tuesday of 2022. But we did a trip in June last year, and we went to the Burn Bray Mansion. People loved it. Had a lot of fun. And going into it, I was like, I just don't know if people are gonna really be into this. And it sold out in what, like 24 hours or something like that?
It was fast. It was a few days, but it was fast. Yeah.
I'm just like, well, I guess I was wrong. And so we went and did the trip. And because I remember when we sat down, I was like, so if people don't, respond to this, is that okay? And you're like, yeah, it is what it is.
Let's give it a shot and see what happens.
And I was overjoyed when so many people were interested. And I know we have people who reached out and said that they want to be on a waiting list for the next one.
Right.
And so it's really exciting. And we're going to be doing another trip here. How many are we shooting for this year?
Probably about 20. I think that's what we were shooting for last time.
Yeah.
20 is a good number.
Yeah. No, actually, okay. I thought you were being sarcastic. I meant trips wise, not seasons. I was like, well, if we're doing 20.
20 trips, yeah, 20 trips would be great. We're going to do probably 3 this year, I think, for 2022. Yeah, we'll do 3. This is the first one in April. We'll shoot for one in July, and then in the fall at some point we'll pick up another one, I think.
Sounds good. Yeah. So you guys are the masterminds behind the trips. I'm not that creative, and I don't got that kind of time. So I'm glad you guys are doing it. And since we did Burn Bray last time, we're not doing that again this time. What's the first trip we're doing? So
we're going to go up to a place called the Shanley Hotel, which has a long and storied history. It was first built in the early 19th century. It's hosted a wide variety of people. It was very elegant at one time. And then at one time it was, speakeasy, nice. Bordello. It's had gangsters that have stayed there, all kinds of infamous and famous people, and some of whom have never left.
Perfect.
There's like 30, I think, spirits that occasionally make their presence known. Yeah. It's a high number. Wow. And so when we were up at Burn Bray, people had some experiences, some supernatural experiences. I expect certainly this time we'll definitely have some as well. Yeah.
And speaking of the supernatural experiences at Burn Bray, if you're listening right now, you still got to email me so we can talk about what you went through.
Still want to talk to him. Was rough.
Yeah.
I think, it was a little, it was, I think his was really sort of truly frightening rather than just, sort of fun. But
I mean, I know he told you about it, and I visually saw it was rough for him, and so, I understand. And he told me, it's hard to talk about and stuff, but, if he wants to talk, I'll talk. Yeah. That's what I do. Yeah. So, we're going to be checking out that place. And, it's like last time, all expenses included?
Yeah. So it'll be a 2-day trip. We'll, meet everyone at the airport in Newark, whether they want to fly in or we'll get there, on their own wheels. That's where the bus will pick us up. And we'll head up to just outside of Sleepy Hollow, New York, which we all know, right?
Yeah, perfect.
And there's a great place there. There's a legend there, a woman named Hulda, called Hulda the Witch. And she was around in the 1700s. She was from Germany. She lived on her own. She was, good at herbal remedies, which, of course, was the only thing available then. And so the townspeople, old woman by herself with a weird accent, they thought of her as a witch.
Sure.
But she's got a headstone in the cemetery in Sleepy Hollow at the old Dutch Reformed Church. So we'll take a look at the actual place where she lived. There's actually a little sort of witch's cabin there, which is interestingly keeps getting, if it deteriorates, somebody's rebuilding it, whether it's Hulda or, local hikers.
Really?
Yeah.
Nobody knows who's...
No,
really?
It's always sort of rebuilt. So
wow,
that'll be an interesting thing, I think, to check out. And it's right near a place called Spook Rock.
Okay.
Which, according to legend, there was a Native American warrior a few centuries ago who came across these spiritual, ghostly sort of maidens dancing on the rock. That was his encounter there. And then, so thereafter, for many centuries, it was used as a sort of council place for Native American tribes. So should be some pretty interesting energy, I think, around
Sounds
there
good.
as well. Yeah, absolutely. That's just our, sort of early part of the day. We'll have lunch in Sleepy Hollow. So we'll get a chance to check out that town. It's actually a really cool town. And then we'll head relatively close by to New Paltz. There's a street there called Historic Huguenot Street. So the Huguenots were French Protestants who left France in the age of religious warfare, and they settled here quite early. The houses all date to the 1600s. And likewise, lots of interesting spiritual activities. So we'll get a nice little tour of all the, ghostly occurrences that occur on this street. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And then we'll head up to the Shanley. It's in the Catskills. So we'll get a chance to see the Catskills. The Catskills are really, really pretty cool. But we'll get into the Shanley. We'll be able to stay there overnight. And we'll get in and do our, ghost hunting and have our experiences. Should be really cool.
Nice
to stay in a haunted house overnight. Yeah.
Just, like the last time we had the ghost, the paranormal team come in. Are we doing something similar to that?
Yep. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah. They'll take us around. They'll, we'll get we'll do the EVPs and look, there's one ghost cat too called Sweet Thing. So
nice.
If nothing else, maybe we'll see a ghost cat. But
well, speaking of the YouTube channel, we have a video of a ghost cat on our YouTube channel. People can check out. That's a fun little video. That's cool. There you go.
Well, you can preview ghost cats. Yeah, you just sleep with one overnight.
There we go.
But there's cool stuff. I mean, people have encountered mysterious clock chimes, cold and hot spots, whistling, disembodied footsteps, piano music, laughing children, the smell of cooking, like all kinds of sort of spiritual, ghostly activities that occur there in this storied hotel. Yeah. So there should be no doubt that, there should be some pretty interesting encounters there for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah. And there's, we get the whole hotel. So it'll just be our group that's staying there.
That's the best.
Yeah.
Like, that's the best. I mean, like, we don't have to worry about going in there. Like, if anybody listening right now, you're not going to be going in there and there's going to be guests staying there and you feel a little awkward. Like, you don't got to worry about that. It's everybody who's there is there for the same freaking thing.
Exactly. They're all part of our group and we're all wanting to do the same thing. So we can, we have the run of the place all night.
Wow.
So we can stay, everybody can stay up as late as they want, ghost hunting or, whatever it is they want to do. There's, some of the bedrooms, the most haunted rooms in the hotel, so we can kind of accommodate, if you really want that supernatural experience, we can put you in one of those rooms.
Oh, okay.
If you're not quite sure that's where you are, we'll put you in a room that's purported not to have much activity.
Well, as far as I go, I'll see how I feel that day. I might be a little too tired, but also known as scared. But
if you really get freaked out, there's hotels down the street.
Oh, there you go. I'm sure I'll be fine.
No, it'll be fun.
I'm sure I'll be fine. So
we'll all be fine.
Yeah, tough guys.
So 200-year-old mansion that will be, sort of
That's
getting
awesome.
to spend our time in. And, then the next morning, of course, if people want to talk to you about, what their experiences are, maybe that might find its way onto a future show at some point.
Yeah. I know last time we wish we had more time in the morning.
Yep.
Do you know what the schedule will look like that morning yet?
Yeah, we'll have a little more time there.
Okay,
we're not going to, I think that was one of the things that we learned last time when we did this is that we do want, people do want a little more time in the morning, not to be rushed out or, to be able to share their stories and so forth. So we're definitely going to do that as well. Yeah, we don't leave until like 11 or 11:30 in the morning.
Okay.
And then we head over to into the Catskills past Witch's Hole State Forest.
Nice.
And into the historic Warwick Valley, where we find ourselves at Silvio's Villa, which is an 18th century inn, home to travelers. And, it's got a long storied history and, of course, haunted as well. So we'll get a little talk there about the history of the Silvio Inn and a good lunch, too. That's always good. It's an Italian
Always
place.
good.
So Italian, lunch and, mystery. It's always a good thing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And so just to remind people, these trips are the prices all encompassing. So, I mean, it's whatever you pay, that's for your housing. It's for your food on the trip. It's all that, the bus trip, everything.
Yeah. Admissions where we're going, of course, the ghost hunting team that's coming in, everything is included. So once you step on the bus with us the first morning to the time you step off the next day in the afternoon, everything's included. You don't have to reach into your pocket for anything. So it's the same price as we did before. It's $9.95 a person. That's all inclusive. So, how you get to the Newark airport, of course, is up to each person. We don't know where everyone's coming from. If you're going to fly in, as several people did last time, we can, you can make arrangements. We can help you with that. Jen and I do run our tour company. This is one of, these tours that we do with Tony are some of the many that we do over the years, each year. So we're perfectly capable of helping you get to, the pickup point at the Newark airport.
Yeah.
So that's, it's easy enough for us to do. You just reach out to us and tell us what you need, and we'll help you do it.
Perfect. Yeah. And that's the thing that I'm so confident with, because you guys do this. I mean, if I was just saying, hey, let's do this, I got this idea, let's just go figure it out, it would be a mess. It would be a mess. So I'm just glad that I got people that are, this is what you guys do. And I'm really excited about round 2 here. And, if there's a good turnout, we'll do a 3rd one, 4th one. We'll just keep going.
Keep going.
There's no shortage of places we can go check out and stuff in this country.
It's just an endless amount of places. In fact, what we're thinking about for July is a place up in Vermont called Wilson Castle.
Freaking love it.
Which is also very, very haunted.
It's a real castle,
It's
right?
a real castle. Yeah, it's a real castle. It's got real castle history, as much as you can in a country that's a few hundred years old rather than many centuries. But it's awesome. And it's really cool. We have to do it in summer because it's not heated in the winter.
That's right. We were talking about doing it late this year, right?
We thought about like, we'll do it like November or early December. We called them up. They're like, well, we don't have any heat. So we thought that might be a little too chilly.
Yeah.
Vermont and, January.
Everybody's bringing their like space heaters on the planes. I was really surprised last time. I mean, we had people from all over the country, Idaho, California, people signing up, coming in. It was just like
Tennessee, Colorado, it was Rhode Island.
We had a guy from Philly come, which was right in back. He's like, that's easy,
That was totally, we left from Philly last time, so that was really easy. But we've had people from all over, so it was great. And I think everyone that went really had a great time.
Yeah.
We got really positive feedback. And so forth. So, we always recommend, with a trip like this, travel insurance, because, you always think it's not going to happen to you. But the fact is, with all the trips that Jen and I run, it happens to someone on every single trip. So, that's an important aspect. But, give us a call. We'll talk about all those things.
And you cover all that stuff as far as like helping them get all that. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's the thing that people have to understand is that from beginning to end, you guys are there to guide it. I mean, I'm in the middle of making some life changes, and I'm working with people, and they're just helping me walk through it and stuff, to every process of what we're doing here. So, it's the same thing with this. I mean, you call, and from that moment on, you guys are just helping the whole process along. So,
from organizing, just getting on to be to come on the trip, to anything you need to get there, or we have people come in a day early. We have people stay a day after. It depends on flight schedules and so forth. But however much you want to stay, or if you want to just get in and out, we can do that. Whatever, sort of logistical help you need, and insurance, whatever, we're good with all that.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, if people want to come, how do they contact you guys?
Excellent question.
Yeah.
So you can just give us a ring. Our telephone number is 973-513-9001. You can email us at travelgrouptours@aol.com. Yes, we still use an AOL email address. It's kind of horrifying, but it's stuck. So you can either give us a call, shoot us an email, and we'll get in touch with you and get you all squared away.
Awesome. Yeah. Sounds good. So if you're interested, go ahead and get a hold of them. And the information, the phone number, the email will be in the description of this episode. And I'm sure Lindsay will do a write-up on the website for the blog too over time here. You said this was in April, right?
April. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's, and you can also check out our website too for all the details there.
Awesome.
Which is educatedwanderer.com. That's get you there, and you'll see everything we do there, but you can specifically zero in on this trip. It's just, the trip title that you look for is the Confessionals on Tour. The spirits are in. That's the name of the tour.
That's cool.
In, INN, in. That's
Did you come with that, Jen?
Well, it's on there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The spirits are in.
It's perfect.
Perfect.
And the dates of the tour specifically are April 8th to the 9th.
Okay.
So that's helpful to know.
Awesome. Sounds good. Go ahead, guys, and contact them. And if you have any questions, I would direct them towards them. So just get them directly, because more than likely, if it didn't cover it on this little conversation, I probably don't know. So just reach out to Creed and Jen, and they'll take care of you.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I was going to say, we'll email you the full write-up of all the details, so you'll know exactly what you're in for.
Perfect.
At least physically. I can't talk about spiritually, but we'll do our best to get that for you too.
Yeah. To enter at your own risk kind of thing.
Exactly.
So, All right. So today we got Nick coming on the show today, and he started an Instagram account about a year ago. And during that time, he started recording military encounters with the paranormal, cryptozoology, and everything in between. And he comes on today for an overtime show. So this is a public show. And then we have a whole other hour segment for members only on the website. But he's going to be sharing all these different military stories that he's gathered over the year or so, where these military men are coming forward and sharing what they experienced in the field and, more importantly, in this country on military bases. A lot of weird things happening, and he talks about it all today. So let's get to Nick right now. All right, today we got Nick on the show. Nick, what's going on, brother?
How's it going, Tony? Thanks for having me on today.
Thanks.
Quite an honor. Been listening to the Confessionals for a while now, and now I'm finally on the show.
Man, I'm glad you're here. You contacted me a few months ago, and we've been trying to work this out and stuff. You were on my buddy's podcast, Sasquatch Chronicles, sharing some of these stories, and you have a ton of stories, and you wanted to share more on this show, and I was like, sounds good to me, bro. So you run an Instagram account called Tales from the Grid Square. Let people know about the Instagram account, how it came about, and what you do with it.
Yeah, so I'll just start off by saying, I am still in the military. I'm not going to give too many details, but I got to put this disclaimer out. So anything I say on this show is not reflective of the U.S. military. Sorry, guys. I'm also just a boring logistics guy. I'm not a cool special forces dude. So if you want to know where all the hidden secrets are in the United States, I'm the wrong guy to talk. Well, I won't give you answers, but we could talk all day about it.
That's what they all say, though. So now you just put a target on your back, and I'm going to be grilling you now because you just put a target on your back. I know you're lying. They know you're lying. Enjoy the ride, Nick. Enjoy the ride.
No, thank you, Tony. But yeah, no. So I've always had an interest in paranormal kind of stuff, cryptids, ghosts, everything like that. I had some experiences that we'll probably talk about later. But like all good things, it kind of started as a drunken idea. I was drinking one night, and I had kind of like some experiences in the military, and I went to JRTC previously, which for those that don't know, JRTC is the Joint Readiness Training Center. It's in Fort Polk, Louisiana. And I kind of had like some weird experiences there, and just talking to other people who had been there and hearing their weird experiences kind of. And one night after a couple of beers, I had this great idea, like, why don't I start this Instagram page? And that kind of came out about from there's military meme pages, I guess the best way to describe them, like of every niche. And, if there's medics, there's a medics meme page. If there's, tankers, there's a tankers meme page. But two of these pages got the idea like way back when COVID started, when, people basically on lockdown, they were going to do like ghost stories. And I thought I was surprised about how many they would post them on their story. And so like it wasn't like how I have it on the page now, but like they're the ones that started it. And I was surprised about how many people were coming forward with these stories, and everything from like ghosts to creatures to stuff in combat, stuff in the barracks. Like I was like, that's really fascinating stuff. So fast forward about a year and a half later, I finally get the idea. Like there's really, they did it like as an event during COVID. I was like, there's really no page that collects all these. So like, why don't I make something like that? And I was just thinking, because for the most part, like in the regular world, yeah, you don't want people to think you're weird or crazy, right? But like in the military, like, if I hear voices behind me and I turn around, there's no one there, do I really want to say something? Because people may think like mentally, maybe I'm not there. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with that. But, there's an extra added layer, I think, in the military, in all militaries, about like kind of talking about the weird and I guess the woo, if you want to say it. Because you don't want people to think you're crazy, because people think you're crazy, they're just not gonna trust you. So I was like, well, what if I created a page where people could DM me their stories? I repost them anonymously, kind of like cut out all like any identifiable information except for what they want. So I try to leave it like maybe very vague, like unit. So like a brigade, which is huge, to like just a time frame being like a year, right? Unless they want it that way. They want like more detail. Some people just want themselves like credited, and that's fine. But that way it's like, hey, I believe your stories. Like, I want to hear your stories, and we'll keep it like anonymous. And so then maybe people will come and comment and say like, hey, I saw the same thing. You're not going to be alone. So I started it, and then I started getting like people coming in. Yeah, like people are coming forward with like some very crazy stories, and not just like, oh, I saw something in the barracks, like, you know, oh, I saw Bigfoot in the training center. I saw a ghost woman standing on the bridge out at, you know, Camp Schwab in Okinawa. Like a lot of people coming forward. And so the page really took off, and it really took off thanks to Sasquatch Chronicles too. Going on there, I was able to get a ton more veterans on there, and I'm always trying to get more followers to the page. Doesn't really benefit me, but what it does benefit is the more people I can find, the more people I can like troll through for stories. And, you know, hey, have you ever seen a UFO? And sometimes I'll get like 10 stories that same day about people that have seen like UFOs. And it's just trying to connect that bridge between like, hey, I'm in the service, you're in the service. Like we have that shared experience. Like, tell me what you want to tell others, but you feel like you can't.
Yeah, I know from 5 years of podcasting, doing this stuff, it's hard to get military guys to talk. And so to have a guy that's in the military asking for the stories, I'm sure helps a lot. You know, because like when Charlie was on my show for episode 122, he still says things to me that go way over my head. I'm like, bro, I don't know what you're talking about. And he has to break down like the terminology and things, because whenever we're talking to stuff, he's like, he says things I just don't get. And so there's an automatic gap in the way you can communicate with one another, where it's not the case when you're in the military. Yeah.
Now I'll put the one caveat to that, to those stories. I tell people, like, if you're going to violate OPSEC or some type of NDA that you have signed, do not tell me the story. Like, the last thing we need is for you to talk about stuff you're not supposed to. And I'm not trying to post government secrets on an open source intelligence website. So that is the one thing. Most of these stories are, you know, from people, regular Joes. I don't get many, like I said, I don't got a lot of cool guys in here, but I got just the regular conventional guys like me telling these stories. You gotta start living on the edge, brother. You gotta start living on the edge. You're playing it too safe. Not quite yet, Tony. Not quite yet. I got you. Listen, if you keep this page going and stuff, and if you ever get out of the military, whenever that day comes and stuff, man, you could have a fun time in the next chapter of that page's existence. So yeah, there's definitely days I like come across things and I'm like, or people tell me things and I'm just like, I really want to dig into this more. Or like, you know, sometimes I will share stuff, but I will significantly cut down details on purpose to like make it very vague. Yeah, you got to protect yourself on that stuff. I get it. I totally get it. So, all right, let's start talking about some of these stories and stuff. So just to let the audience know what we're getting into, you know, I did a Giant of Kandahar story with Ellie Marzulli back when I first started. I think it was like episode 18. I was like shell shocked when I reached out to him, and like within an hour or two, he reached back to me and he's like, sure, I'll come on. I'm like, but I'm a new podcast. I'm not going to tell him I'm a new podcast. I'm just going to go, you know. I was stunned. So I was like shell shocked when I had to talk to the guy. But he did hit on the Kandahar Giant, and he actually is in the intro. So a lot of times people over the years have asked me about the Kandahar Giant stories and stuff. And I'm like, well, you got to go all the way back to episode 18. Sorry in advance for the audio quality. And so, but we're going to do that. And we got some paranormal stuff, some Russian military, some Iraqi stuff, the Afghan skinwalker. I'm very interested in hearing about that. And even down to like cults, like an occultic kind of story coming out of Iraq. So we're going to be kind of jumping all over the place of stories that you've collected. And we talked about this before, you have a great order of things as of right now, as far as what we're going to get into here. And so we're going to keep it in the order you have it. I want to let everybody know right now, this is going to be an overtime show and a members show week with Nick here. So this is the first hour. The second hour is going to be an overtime. Right after this, you can listen to the overtime segment with more of Nick's personal stories that he has had. And then later in the week, we're going to have him back for a members episode where we're going to go into more stories from his page. He's got that many friends. So it's definitely an Instagram page to check out if you haven't done so already. Tales from the Grid Square. Nick, I hand it over to you, my friend. Let's start off with the Kandahar Giant. Sweet. All right, Tony. So this is probably my favorite story from the page, just because it is the only story I've ever gotten that's even close to the story of the Giant of Kandahar. And I fully believe this individual fully believes what he saw. So I'll start off just to phrase it. So before I start the story, it is actually in the Kunar province of Afghanistan. So it's not exactly in Kandahar, but it's in a similar kind of area. So to start this story. All right. I was deployed as an infantry team leader with the army in the Kunar province of Afghanistan from 2008 to 2009. One night we set up on an observation patrol to overlook a village that was suspected IEDs were coming out of due to a successful IED recovery we had done a few weeks prior. My LT gave me a new thermal imaging system called the Recon 3 that none of us were familiar with and told me to figure it out so I can pass along that information to the other team leaders. That's a classic army statement. Yeah, we don't know how to use this, figure it out. All right, back to story. I started messing with the Recon 3 to see its capabilities and was surprised at the clarity of the zoom on it. I spent most of my time messing with the different functionalities and watching the village. I started to look across the valley to see what I could see, and that led me to look along the spur we set in on and saw a very large heat signature at the top of one of these false peaks. I did everything I could to get as clear of an image as I could, suspecting it was a group of Taliban huddled together around a light, as they tend to do in the mountains. All of a sudden, this heat signature stood up as one being. The trees in that area grew up to 10 to 12 feet tall, and this thing was at least as tall, if not taller than the trees that surrounded it. It started taking steps parallel to my position, and it was covering ground quickly with ease. Its stride was slow and relaxed, yet it moves with incredible speed. That led me to believe that whatever I was seeing, this creature or not, was gigantic. It very quickly traversed the landscape, and I lost sight of it along a neighboring spur. I did not believe what I saw initially, assuming that I had imagined it. I had never seen anything like it in my life. And I didn't really tell people about it while I was in, even when I got out. I kept that story to myself, thinking that there was no way I saw what I saw. But then in 2010, I listened to a story on Coast to Coast, specifically the story about the Giant of Kandahar. And that made all the memories of my time in service come flooding back and made me consider other things I saw during that deployment. For instance, the creature was described as having fire orange hair and reminded me of a tradition the locals in the area would do. They would dye their hair bright orange color and even dye some of the goats the same color. They never gave an explanation why they would do this, and it seemed like they would do this every once in a while, and then all of a sudden those dyed goats would be gone, and the locals' hair would no longer be dyed orange. I assumed that it was maybe a cultural thing I didn't understand, but now it makes me wonder if that was some kind of gesture to the creature Nephilim, or the goats were sacrificed to it. I am a Christian, and the Bible briefly discussed the men of renown, aka the Nephilim. I think that's what I saw, a member of an ancient race of giants descended from fallen angels. Or it could be something like a Sasquatch. I'm not sure.
That's really interesting. The way you were describing that story to begin with, I thought I had heard this one already from the actual person, but it's a totally different story. So it really, this is something that military guys over there have seen. Like I said, I've talked to somebody, it's never been on the show, but I've talked to somebody who was looking through night vision down into a valley. I guess they were observing a town or something, and they saw some kind of giant running out of the town, and he covered thousands of feet within like a matter of a minute, just shot right up into the mountains. And so I thought you were kind of going with that story. I was like, oh crap, I know exactly who this is. and it wasn't him though. So that's really interesting. So what do you make of the whole the giant stories coming out of the Middle East? I mean, before you started doing this stuff, is that something that you kind of were interested in?
Yeah, so actually, believe it or not, and I wish I could find the book. When I was a kid, I had this old bound book. I think it might have been from when my dad was a kid, but it was like Great Mysteries of the World or something like that. Unsolved Mysteries of the World. And there was a whole chapter in it about giants and talking about how my brother and I were fascinated with this. And this was like kind of led to a little hobby of ours looking into it. But basically, like, the whole story, the native tribes tell stories of fighting giants that ate people and they wiped them out. And when the settlers came in and they started moving into the native lands, they started finding giant skeletons. And they're like, hey, like there's these massive 7 to 9 feet tall skeletons in North America. And then the Smithsonian comes and kind of collects them all. And then they kind of disappear from public eye. And so the story, and I'm finding out, looking into that's kind of like, that was more information on that. I don't know. I think maybe, I could believe it. Maybe different a subset of humans. I don't know. Like maybe in Afghanistan, people have told me I've never been deployed to Afghanistan, but I've talked to people who have, and I've talked to people that have lived there, and they've told me that there's places that even Afghans have not even gone to yet. Mountains like so deep and valleys so hidden away that like you could put a whole village in there, and you would never know. And in fact, a good example of that is another Sasquatch Chronicles episode previous to mine. A gentleman goes on the show and he talks about going to a village in Afghanistan that is so detached from the rest of the world that, you know, they thought the ocean was a myth. They thought it was made up, like a joke.
That's
or
amazing.
that when a plane flies overhead, they call it an X because they don't know what it is. So I don't know. I think it could be possible, especially like someplace like Afghanistan, to have something just hidden out there.
Yeah, you know, I have some people that I've obviously been in connection with over the years that have been in Afghanistan or were deployed in Afghanistan. And I've been told that there's a section of Afghanistan that does connect to China. It's like a 30-mile section of border. And,
national park, right?
Yeah. And I've been told that he was told by locals that there are giants up there, and that's why nobody goes up in there. And it's interesting. It's interesting. And, you know, it just makes you wonder what's going on and why, like you mentioned about the Western world kind of thing, it makes you wonder what the differences are between cultures that makes a government want to cover up such information if they were. I know you can't go too deep on things here, but I will. No, I was talking to Dark Waters, and I can't remember if this was the public segment or the overtime, but he talked about a giant in the swamps of Louisiana, and the swamps of Louisiana, when the storm came through, cleared out a section where people for the first time could go back on boats, and you know it was like a whole new fishing game area, and there was this report that came out that there was like some giant being as tall as trees watching from the shoreline. And so there's definite rumors, and that's just one story. There's definite stories coming out of United States of America of people seeing giants, not Bigfoot, giants. And it makes you wonder, like, how do they hide? Like if you're curious about how Bigfoot hides, like how does a 20-foot tall giant humanoid hide? Like how is that even possible? You know? And so but then again, when you start getting so many, I'm fairly convinced that most of the people that listen to my show, Wes's show, Dark Water's show, that most of the people, I'm not saying everybody, but most people, I believe, don't really live in areas that are super vastly rural. And you just can't comprehend how vast some of these spaces are. I couldn't comprehend how large the Daniel Boone National Forest was until I went there. And I was stunned that when I saw a sign on the highway saying, "Welcome to the Daniel Boone National Forest," I looked at how long I had to drive, and it was like an hour still to get to the point of where I was going in the Daniel Boone. And I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. And so that in those kind of moments, it makes you really realize that, you know, it's there's a lot of space out here still. So who knows what could be hiding?
Yeah, I definitely think I read somewhere, how many times have you, like, black bear is one of those common animals in North America. How many times have you seen a dead black bear on the side of the road, or a dead black bear in the middle of the woods? You know, things that know what humans are and know how to hide, like, will never be found by us. Especially if you go in the woods trying to find them and not hunt them. I think that's you'll never find these things.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to be hunting them, so it is what it is. I'm not kidding.
So, like I said, Tony, you can count me in on that whenever I get back to the actual mainland.
I hear you. So let's move on to the next one, man.
Okay, so this next story here is in Iraq, and it covers an individual who was an Abrams crew member in two deployments, one in 2003 and one to 2006. Okay, so the first one is Samarra, Iraq, 2003. I had participated with the invasion of Iraq back in 2003 as an Abrams crew member in the U.S. Army. We marched all the way north to Missoula and then turned around and headed back to Samara, where we finally set up a permanent fob. Near Samara, there are these incredibly ancient ruins, the Spiral Minaret and the Golden Mosque, later destroyed by ISIS. These ruins were the best, though. They were always, even though like I was never able to actually walk through them and check it out, we patrolled nearby to make sure everything was quiet. It was just really cool to look at. One time, filling in for the gunner's position, we were scanning the ruins at night to look for any obvious hotspots of insurgents. Some of the stones in these ruins still retain residual heat from the hot sun, and they would produce like a glow on our IR, so we had to be careful. This only happened a few times, but it was reported by several tank crews, as well as our scouts with their LRS trucks. But sometimes, when scanning the ruins, there were these cold spots that would move through the ruins, and in between the burial sites and the nearby mausoleum. These would show up clear as day on our powerful main gun sites, but there were no bodies, objects, or anything like that. Just these incredibly cold spots in the air moving around slowly through the ruins, moving in and front behind stones, and it was the weirdest thing I ever saw in that deployment. And we still never really got an answer what was going on. Now, that was you got to think about that, too. Like, on an Abrams tank, like, those thermal sights are super powerful. So, like, I mean, this is so powerful. It's like, I think it's top secret, like, some of the capabilities to, but, like, if they're picking up something on those thermals, there's definitely something there.
Okay.
All right. So the second story is the same individual. He's in Taji, Iraq, 2006. So I was a tank commander on an M1A2 at SCP main battle tank. So that's like kind of a newer model tank. And my platoon and I, 4 Abrams, were spread out along 1,000 meters on MSR Tampa to keep an eye on convoys. It's probably about 3 a.m, and I have the entire crew getting some sleep while I stay up monitoring the thermals and the cameras. While doing a routine scan, I see a light in the sky that's brighter than anything else I can see that night. It pops up on the CITV, and I see it with my own eyes. I have the tank running on battery power, so there's no noise from the turbine, and the CITV doesn't require hydraulics, so it's also silent. Whatever this thing was, it made no noise, hovered in place probably 300 to 400 meters out, and moved around just a bit, and then took off super fast. I never really felt threatened by it, just super curious. This was 2006, so personal drones weren't really a thing in small Iraqi villages. And the only drones we had at the time were incredibly loud and couldn't really hover in place. I talked to my platoon about it. No one else saw anything. I talked it up to being a lack of sleep, stress, and dehydration. They could be right, but it certainly seemed real to me, whatever the hell it was.
So, I mean, did he come short of saying it was a UFO?
He did, but he's like, I don't know what I saw, but another story that I was able to get from people in the same time, people saw the black triangles in Iraq, whatever. And I know that's black triangles are a common thing. And I think there's I haven't seen it yet, the J.J. Abrams documentary, UFO, but they talk about like the orbit airship to orbit program. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Not really, no. So it's basically like the gist of it is the government may have allegedly created these like supersonic airships. Basically, like they look like a giant wedge shape, like the triangle, and they kick on engines and they can go supersonic speeds and they kick them off and they can float silently because they're an airship. And apparently these things were, according to the documentary, they've been operating for a while. And so I've always wondered, like, maybe we had those things out there in Iraq. I don't know. I don't know what an airship that can go supersonic speeds and into space would be of use to the military, but I can only guess.
Okay, let's talk about a sponsor for today's show, a new sponsor. Friends, we talk about security on this show. We talk about home security, food security, survival security, and now we're talking about online security with Surfshark VPN. They keep your online identity safe by encrypting all the information sent between your device and the internet. This keeps your personal data protected from big companies or cyber criminals. Surfshark has 3,200 servers in 65 countries. You can access and unblock content libraries and streaming services from other countries like all of the Netflix libraries. And here's the most important part, friends. This is the thing that I love, and I know you guys love too, because most of the people that listen to this show are kind of in the similar thought process as me. You can bypass censorship. everywhere. Surfshark liberates your internet by unblocking blocked websites and bypassing geo restrictions. That's a huge thing for me, and I know it's a huge thing for a lot of people, especially people who are trying to, research things and understand what's happening around the globe. Sometimes you need to be able to unblock certain websites that are blocked where you're located at. Now, you can secure your online data as well. A VPN encrypts your online data and helps to secure your personal information when you use free public Wi-Fi, and that is a goldmine for hackers. They look for things like that. So you're going to protect yourself like that. Masking your IP address is essential to becoming private online. A VPN makes sure that your city, country, and download history aren't linked to your identity. Friends, having a VPN is huge, and Surfshark is huge as well, and that's why I'm really glad they're here. Be sure to go to surfshark.deals/confessionals and use my code confessionals to get 83% off plus 3 extra months for free. That's a great deal, friends. 83% off plus 3 free months when you go to surfshark.deals/confessionals and use my code confessionals. A few years ago, I did a whole video on, and it's on YouTube. It's probably buried, but you got to look for it. But there's like these pyramid-shaped UFOs popping up in DC over the Pentagon.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And what was interesting about that was it was caught on video by several different people. Like there was a group of guys in a car driving by the Pentagon, and they recorded it. There was another guy in Arlington Cemetery who I had on the show who recorded it. Like this was something that actually happened, caught on video, and it makes it like. At the time, I was thinking, either this is 100% real and something's going on and nobody's even talking about this, or it would be a hologram, which is another thing that I started thinking about because there's also video, and I don't know why they did this, but there was a video that came out not too long ago of AOC. It was a hologram of her crying. There's a famous picture of her crying at the border wall from years ago, and they took the picture of her crying and made it a hologram above the Capitol building. And that was caught on video too. And I don't know why they did that. I mean, but it's certain to show that there's the capability that they have to do such things. And so I don't know if the pyramid that I had featured was real or if it was a hologram. I don't know. But when it comes to it popping up all over the world, then it makes you really wonder. It seems like these things are probably pretty real.
Yeah, no, I've definitely been paying attention to the UFO sightings recently, and I think maybe people are more open to it, or maybe they're just seeing more. But it's definitely interesting, especially with the U.S. Navy coming out and saying like, yeah, now it's unknown aerial phenomena in the sky, and we don't know what they are.
Also known as UFO.
Yeah.
Stop! You guys need to stop making up new names for stuff we've been calling for years. I mean, what is wrong?
It's the military. We love new acronyms.
What the heck?
No, I find it super fascinating. Yeah, because like even here in Hawaii, about a year ago, there was like a big UFO sighting on the western side, and it was after New Year's. And so if you've never been to Hawaii on New Year's, fireworks are illegal, and like the whole sky is lit up with fireworks. Like literally, like I don't think if you're an aircraft you would want to fly anywhere near it because there's that many. But after the fireworks had stopped, people reported seeing this like big blue orb of light in the sky moving around. And I just find it funny because after like now there's this uptick in sightings out at sea and like back people all over the world, people seeing stuff. I always wonder like maybe are we just paying more attention or is it like increasing? I find this stuff super fascinating.
Yeah, it's hard to gauge which one of that it is, but the ones that are popping up out of sea and stuff, I think really start pushing to the idea of them coming from underneath the water. I mean,
makes sense.
I've talked about it before on the show. I have pictures of one coming out of the water. It was going super fast. The guy got it on video, and so I have 3 still pictures of it shooting from the water into the sky, and it's something shot out of the water, and so it just. Yeah. And then when you have 95% of the Earth's water is unexplored, I mean, it's a lot of space to hide whatever you want in there if you have the ability to. So,
and then there's also you have to I know it's like the not popular theory, but technology in itself is something really incredible and how fast it moves. I mean, I think China just tested like some hypersonic missile, I think yesterday or something like that. But like the amount of the level of technology that we see now. Besides what's going on behind the scenes, I'm sure is like a night and day difference. Sorry, people, I don't know what you're talking about. I still have vehicles from like built in the 70s. So, I haven't seen anything, but I could imagine that technology behind the scenes is much more advanced than we have now. And I think I even saw like patents from all sorts of militaries to do like drones that can go in and out of the water at random. So I always wonder, like, what's scarier? There's UFOs out there. Or we have technology that is so advanced it makes the F-22 look like a toy plane.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, then I just want to make sure we have that technology.
Yeah.
But yeah, I talked to a guy, and when I'm done talking here, we'll get back to the stories. But I want to say this, that years ago I was doing delivery, and I talked to a guy who used to be an engineer in the military back in the 60s, and he told me, this is probably 4 years ago. He told me the technology we have today, they had back in the 60s, that they were working on developing it back then. And so he just told me, he's like, man, the government has far beyond the technology that we can even imagine right now. And so it's kind of interesting to hear from somebody who was an engineer in the military designing like the night vision that we have today accessible to civilians. He's like, we had that way back then. Like, that's just the way it works.
Oh yeah. No, yeah. It's interesting when you start thinking about it.
Yeah. All right. Before I get you in trouble though, let's move on to another story.
All right. Okay. So these next two are going to be from Vietnam. So I got this story a while back, and I liked it because it reads like something out of Apocalypse Now. So this individual, his father was in Vietnam, and this is the story that his dad has like recounted to him. So it goes like this. So my father was in Vietnam and saw some crazy shit. One base he was on, which he won't tell me the names, is no longer there, and he doesn't want me to try and look it up and accidentally end up on a watch list, was a sweet assignment. My dad had to work in an office, fix copiers, printers, or whatever random nonsense equipment and admin paper that they had there. He said he got picked to be sent there, and it was like an easy assignment for him, so he didn't complain. It's a small base with about 100 other guys, all sorts of people that, again, were picked out to be stationed there. They used to come up with stories and jokes about why they were sent there, but it was cool at first, and they would party and have fun, typical old school Army shenanigans. My dad worked on a crew with about 12 to 15 other guys. And what they had to do was they had to sort through paperwork. Now, none of the papers made any sense. The only way they could sort through them was by a number at the top. Some of the things on there were like the types of a certain flower, and some didn't make any sense at all. Like they were just word vomit. They would get boxes and boxes of these paper to sort through every day through a big truck. They didn't have a quota or really anyone telling them what to do, so they usually worked just the standard 6 to 8 hours. They would call it quits for the night, and around 2 months in, they would start to experience things that would become a regular phenomenon. My dad said that he would wake up in the morning and everything in his room would be shaking, like he was in the middle of an earthquake. When he went outside, everyone was looking around. My dad asked a few guys what they were looking for, and one of the guys said that they saw something big fly over the base. My dad thought maybe it was a bomber or something, so he brushed them off. After that, they had regular earthquakes to the point that they couldn't react anymore. Or then they wouldn't react anymore. At night, they started to see lights and colors flash outside their windows, and they would hear noises as if they were outside alone, night or day. A few guys got spooked and would eventually request to be reassigned. One by one, the guys who were usually chill and laid back would start to snap and become panicked shells of themselves, just overall paranoid and just high strung. One night, my dad was outside when he hears what sounds like running, like someone full sprinting, but like all around him, like things, like people just running all around him. Like it was everywhere he looked, but it was just missing just by that split second what he was seeing, like going around a corner. He tossed a cigarette away and began to walk. He started to hear what sounded like a squeaking noise behind him, and it began to fill him with a pure dread, more than anything he has felt in his life, like he knew he was about to die. Luckily, when he tossed the cigarette, it was caught into a patch of dried grass, and it caught it on fire. He snapped out of it once he saw the fire spreading and ran to grab a fire extinguisher. But when he came back, it was daylight, and people were out looking for him. He had been missing for 4 hours, but it felt like minutes to my dad. Not long after, another guy went crazy and set a building on fire. Big trucks showed up, and my dad and the others were left that base. Well, my dad was a bit of a shithead in the Army and decided that he would go AWOL and with a few others, and they would try to find that base again. But when he said he reached the area, the entire place was an overgrown field, like nothing had ever been there. My dad couldn't explain it, but he remembered everything clearly. In the following years, everyone who he spoke to couldn't tell him anything about that base. Just my dad and the handful of others that were with him could remember.
That's trippy. That is trippy.
Like, just like, what? It goes like, it's, yeah, I don't know. The individual who was here thinks that either his dad is, he doesn't believe his dad was making it up. He thinks his dad is being 100% true. He thinks that his dad was involved in some type of like, I don't know, wandering soul, if you've ever heard of that.
No, I don't think so. What is that?
Yeah, so it was a kind of a vague operation in Vietnam done by the psychological warfare, basically. And it was they did some stuff to basically wage psychological warfare against, you know, the Viet Cong and the NVA. And
yeah,
there's kind of vague details on how they did that. And so the idea is that maybe, you know, there's no results to it too. This is all from I read on a Wikipedia article, but there's people that think that they were doing other stuff, like experimenting on other people. And, you know, I mean, like trying to maybe like introducing LSD or something into like water just to see like how people would react, to see how they could use that. I don't know that, or he thinks his dad was like on a base and we're getting messed with by like aliens and stuff like that.
Well, it's weird that when he got back to where the base was at one point, it was just a field. I mean, he didn't mention that his dad saw, you know, tire marks or, you know, spots where you could see where a building was at one time. It was a field. And
yeah, maybe it makes me think that maybe it was just all in his head. I don't know.
Or if you want to get trippy with it, that his dad didn't know what he was involved in with the military, but whatever they were doing was accessing that. Maybe they had access to a parallel dimension that they were putting the soldiers into. Not that his dad accessed it, but they was put into it. I'm just saying, like, listen, Nick, I'm just saying, I can't get you in trouble, but I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of weird things that come out over the years, you know, like the idea of the Philadelphia experiment, you know. And so my uncle was in studio and he said that the Philadelphia, and he was in the Navy for 20 some years. The Philadelphia experiment, absolutely 100% real. But what Hollywood has made it is not real. And so, you know, I don't know. I'm just saying, it seems like if his dad's telling the truth, that his dad, how do you explain it? How do you explain it?
I could just see it now. All right, hey, Private, I need you're going to go into this parallel dimension. Don't touch the fabric of reality because it can unravel everything.
Listen, if I could have time talking to his dad, I would ask engaging questions as to how he got to where he went. Tell me where you were and then where you got to, and the step-by-step process of there. And you start pulling at the threads to see if there's anything that, you know, as people say things that you question on it, and then gets them thinking like, yeah, you know what, that was a little weird, you know, and you start trying to figure it out. But if that thing was never there when he went back, it looked like it just was never there, then either he and the rest of the guys just were tripping on LSD and they all have the same memories, or something really bananas bizarre went on. And we're not supposed to believe in those kind of things.
Yeah. I don't know. I can also believe the U.S. Army just, you know, oh, we found a tear in the fabric of society. We're going to put a base here.
Right.
And, oh, where'd the base go? If there's a piece of inhospitable land, or, you know, oh yeah, this land is haunted, but it's cheap. Oh yeah, we're putting a base there.
And then all the weird stuff starts happening.
Yep.
You know, that's very likely, right? That's a very real possibility.
I mean, just look where all the army bases are in the middle of nowhere, you know?
Yeah.
Got it for a premium.
I'm still, well, I'll say it. I'm still looking for a certain type of base that I think exists that is not on any maps and within my state. And so I'm still coming for it, Nick. You're not going to stop me. So.
All right, Tony. I just, you know, I don't know. Maybe the entrance is your garage.
Listen, with that, if it gets you in trouble, maybe, I don't know, maybe, but
if that stuff is anything. If that stuff did exist, Tony, that would be entirely way over my pay grade and way over
Right.
my realm. Like I said, I'm just a ditch digger.
I'm not trying to get you in trouble though. But if you can answer this, what are your thoughts on the deep underground military bases?
So like, I'm sure just strategically there are probably something like that. And this is just my opinion. This is just me, as just a normal guy saying this. I'm sure that there are some bases that they have like that just because it makes sense, like with the Cold War and the threat of nuclear war and stuff like that. Now, do I think that like now with modern media coverage that the ones that are established like Cheyenne Mountain and like some of the other ones that get put on paper, yeah, maybe there's probably more, but they are probably like very, very hush hush. And I think those are more like I think they're more really for the continuity of government, and I'm sure now with modern technology, you can dig stuff and, there's the entrance is the McDonald's bathroom and no one would ever know the wiser. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure for security reasons, there are stuff like that now. Massive places that are so big that they're the size of small cities. I'm a logistics guy, so I just look at it like, people eat a lot. People waste a lot. People make a lot of trash. Like all this stuff has to come from somewhere to some place. So, I mean, there would be mountains of trash or like lines of pickup trucks and semi trucks. That would be the thing. You would need, I mean, as a trucker, like the U.S. military and the U.S. government uses civilian contractors to move us around. That's just part of our logistics system. So like if there was a super secret hidden base in the mountain, you would just need to follow the trucks. I don't think you could keep that hidden. Now, I'm sure there's some, if you want to get to more woo, like maybe there's other shit they use. But if I use it, just look at that from purely like hidden in plain sight. They need fuel. They need beans, bullets, and like water. Like those are like, they need food, all the stuff to run, and they need water, especially water. All that stuff has to come from somewhere. So,
all right, here's my thoughts back to you. You're wrong. No, I was kidding. But so in Pennsylvania, we do have a deep underground military base. It's called Raven Rock. It's on the maps. You can find it, all that stuff. And there's a lot of people that suggest that it is connected underground to Camp David. And that's not too hard to imagine because Raven Rock and Camp David are extremely close. I think within like 5 miles. So if that's true, which I don't see any reason why it couldn't be true, then we have an example of an underground military base that is known to the public connecting to another military base. So if they wanted to, not like they're not short on funds, they have no problem printing money, they could do maybe a deep underground military base where it's secret and the only way to access it is through Raven Rock or one of the known places. I've talked to truck drivers who have gone into Raven Rock and they have one delivery. Like it's just like, because when you go into these places, you can only have what is there for that place. You can't just have a bunch of general freight on there. So like, just to say it's one pallet. And I've talked to one guy who was picking up one pallet, but let's just say it's one truckload. He was there all day long. And so say a trash truck goes into Raven Rock and is gone for 8 hours. It wouldn't be unusual. There's truckers that go in there and they sit and they wait and they wait. And so I'm just saying on my end, I could see how that could be possible. We hear people talk about strange booms and no understanding of where it's coming from. Well, maybe there's some kind of construction going on underground and that's why you have no idea where it's coming from. Just my own thoughts. This is why we're only giving your first name and we're not doing this on video. So I don't want to get you in trouble.
No, I mean, yeah, that's pretty valid point. So I just look at it from like more like the conventional dude. And also I laugh, like the one thing always bugs me, like, right, by secret military bases, right? Who do they have staffing this? Because if they just pick up some Joe Snuffy, some regular guy off the street, come on, like everybody's on TikTok nowadays. I mean, I've always wondered, like, I guess if you make them sign a non-disclosure agreement, it's a legally binding document.
I think there's a lot of that though. I really do. I think there's a lot of vetting as to who gets access to certain things. And once you are somebody that they think is able to do what they need you to do, then you have to sign a legal document, and you're already fitting the profile of somebody that they think would be fine with whatever. And so the odds are you'll be fine. We have people like that were civilians, like Bob Lazar. I don't know if you feel how you feel about Bob Lazar, but he was a civilian working in S4, and he technically went AWOL. He started talking and showing people things, and it created a lot of problems in his life. And so, that maybe even Bob Lazar himself over the years has been an example for other people not to talk about the things that they're doing. And then I think Bob said that, he would get on, I think it was like a blacked out bus. They had no idea how to get to where they were going or something like that. Maybe I'm confusing stories now that I'm thinking about it. But no, I'm pretty sure he had an escort. Like, he couldn't just drive to where he worked. He had to be at a certain spot to get on a bus to be driven. Oh, yeah. And so
I'm sure there's layers and layers of security at these places, but I'm always just curious.
Oh yeah. I mean, curiosity is what, is ultimately going to get me killed. So I'm a big fan. So anyways, let's move on to another story, brother.
Okay. All right. So this next story is also a Vietnam related story. So the background on this is I'll post little articles on the page that I find mainly a lot from the Bigfoot Field Research Organization, because it's easy and I can filter through Fort Polk, and I can get some hits on Fort Polk. But I was Googling paranormal Vietnam, just going by each one of our major wars. And so I found this one article from is kind of a military website called We Are the Mighty. And it was basically, it was talking about a legend in Vietnam troops talked about called the Tree People, and it's not related to the other sightings of Sasquatch-like creatures and other weird things that soldiers saw there. So the gist of it was that there are these soldiers who saw these shadows that look like people, or sometimes they saw actual people in the trees or at the base of these trees inside under the shade. And at night they would see them walking around everywhere. And then it takes a little bit of a woo kind of turn. And then it talks about how that these were actually zombies. The Montagnards told them there's these ghost ghoul things. And then how the soldiers actually found these zombie-like creatures of dead NVA and Viet Cong and American soldiers. And they had to be killed. The light burned them. So they hid in the trees. It got kind of weird. And so that's why we quote unquote, we used Agent Orange in Vietnam. That was the claim. I don't know how much I buy into that one, but when I posted that, I was let me just post this kind of interesting story. I don't know if I buy into it too much. I actually had two individuals reach out to me. One individual whose husband served in Vietnam, another individual whose late family friend also served in Vietnam, who kind of led some credence to that story, maybe more of the supernatural, maybe not the zombies running around Vietnam, but kind of maybe there was actually something to this story. So the first part here, my husband served in Vietnam from 1970 to 1971. He and others saw what they called the tree spirits in Vietnam. Tree spirits are soldiers who died fighting in Vietnam. My husband said that you could see shadows that look like soldiers with weapons. He said you could distinguish the shadows if they were Viet Cong, NVA, or even American soldiers. It looked like it was just the shadow outline of those people. Perhaps they were guarding the area. He didn't think those spirits knew that they were dead. And that when the night sky would light up with artillery illumination rounds, he would see their shadows all in the trees. They would physically be in the trees, on the branches looking down. And so the second part is from another story. And this individual recounts a story that his dad's late friend, Miles. So my dad's late friend, Miles, used to be in a recon battalion in Vietnam. He saw some messed up stuff because they were usually alone and way ahead of everyone else, typical of a reconnaissance battalion. He told me that once in a while you'd see people at night, silhouettes in the trees, bushes, and grass. He described a few of them as all black and shadows. And a few others were the Predator, that see-through, not typical see-through, not invisible. But because they're in the thick of it, they thought it was just the enemy. It could be anything, but nothing would faze them. You'd shoot through these shadows and these glimmers, and they would just stand there and stare at you. I guess what he described as they would just turn and be pointed at your direction. Miles used to tell me that he believed the government was doing experiments out there, or the land was cursed. He also believed that the ghosts couldn't leave the field, so they would just wait and watch the battles. Miles was also a crazy bastard even up until his death. But when it came to Vietnam, he was always dead serious and he never swore. He always swore that he wasn't lying. So I got those two stories and it made me really think that maybe there is something to those spirits, the tree people, the tree spirits. Just another interesting Vietnam story.
Yeah, and that actually maybe it rings a bell for me because it's more local to me, but the idea of Gettysburg, people swear they see apparitions all over Gettysburg from the deadliest battle of the Civil War. And so the idea of, that, do you know of any reason why they would be in trees though? I mean, was this something that maybe they did tactically?
So obviously like the Viet Cong and the NVA would use the trees as cover. But so only thing I could find was that there was like a legend in Vietnam of some of like the more rural tribes. And don't quote me on this. I did, like, when I say research, I'm like, let me look at Wikipedia after work, like
5
before I go to
minutes
sleep.
Later.
Yeah. Now I'm up late, but it was basically like a legend that the ghost of people who died in the jungle would basically congregate around these trees. And that's really all I could find on it. Well, nothing like, they were hostile or anything like that, or like the zombie kind of like the story was going for, the original one I found. But it was more like they're just apparitions that had died in battle and they just stayed there,
Yeah.
Or they were still watching. They were like, I don't know. It was not a lot of information I could find. And that's where it gets hard, like with foreign stories. When I have to dig into that because it's different search engines and like language barrier. If every now and again I'm lucky and I find someone from those parts of the world that'll like elaborate or help me feed me stories. But I don't know. I think maybe they were just ghosts,
Yeah.
Hawaii has a legend of the night marchers, which I don't know if you're familiar.
No.
So night marchers are the ghosts and spirits of ancient Hawaiian warriors. And they will occasionally appear in places that are of great spiritual and significance to the local Hawaiians. So places where like there are big battles and stuff like that. And they appear basically like they'll appear at a distance or they'll walk up to you. And when you see them, you're supposed to leave. Like the legend is you don't stay because it's bad luck. It's bad business for you. They're telling you to leave. And you'll see them marching with torches. Some people report the lights. Some people report the actual apparition, like a full-bodied ancient Hawaiian warrior standing there. And they don't do anything overtly hostile. They just watch you. But it's like that's your cue. Okay, time to go. And that's a pretty big predominant legend. There's even people that see it like it's in some of the training areas here.
Yeah, there's a lot of legends coming out of Hawaii. One of my show artists lives in Hawaii. His name's Alika. He's pure Hawaiian. And he tells me stories a lot whenever we get to talking. And one of these days I got to have him back on the show. I had him on before and stuff, but there's so much that he could share from the local legends. Yes. I mean, he's a historian. Essentially. Really? Yeah. I mean, not like it's not his job. He's a full-time artist, but his bloodline comes from royalty in Hawaii, and he just like 100% is firmly rooted in his lineage, where he knows the history of the land. He knows the legends. He knows everything. He's like a walking encyclopedia for Hawaii, and he loves it. Like he loves his land. So much respect for him. But that is interesting, and I got some thoughts about the zombie angle, but I'm actually going to not talk about it on the recording because I might actually do something else with that angle later, and I don't want to give it away, but I'll tell you later.
Okay.
But yeah,
exciting.
It's interesting. So go ahead and carry on, my friend.
All right. So this next story is really unique. And is it that it comes from Russia, out of a member of someone who served in the Russian armed forces. So disclaimer, even though media pumps it up and, we talk about it, Russia, we're not technically at war with Russia. So like, I will take stories from anyone. So this guy actually served, he came over here, became a U.S. citizen and served in the U.S. Army. Totally legal to do as long as he passed the background check. And he passed every background check known to man. But he has two really interesting stories. And I think it's interesting because, those countries that we may or may not have necessarily a friendly relationship with, or like kind of like that standoffish relationship like we do. I always wonder, like, countries like Iran, Iraq, Russia, China, like paranormal stuff and crazy stuff is not just limited to the Western world. Like, what are they experiencing there that makes their history? And then more importantly, you know, outside of the Western world, people have a different way of viewing the paranormal, you know. In Russia, like, you know, ghosts and spirits are just kind of like, oh yeah, there's one that lives down the road in the swamp. Don't walk past there at midnight. It will drag you into the swamp and drown you.
Common knowledge.
Like, yeah, it's common knowledge. Or like, you know, oh yeah, no, that's our, that demon you saw, that's just our, you know, our local, that is our friendly neighborhood guardian. Just don't cuss around it and keep mind your manners and you'll be okay. You know, so I always find it super fascinating. And I actually have, you know, this is one of the individuals who sent me a story from over there. But I think it's just good. It's just really good perspective on stuff and just also super fascinating. So I'll get into it. So this first story is when he was in Chechnya. So before I became a U.S. citizen and joined the U.S. Army, I was in the VDV, which is the Russian paratroopers from 2008 to 2013. And for those of you who don't know, like, they had mandatory conscription. So that's why he was also in the service. He didn't really have a choice. During my time, I did 2 combat rotations, one being in Chechnya, the other one being in Dagestan. During my first rotation in Chechnya, it was early spring 2009. The rain was nonstop, the fog was thick like porridge, and it shifted between cold and hellishly hot. I was doing a patrol in the dead of night with my sentry team, a group of 4 men, me, Vasya, Kirill, and Alosha. It had been raining the whole day, and it didn't seem like it was going to stop for the night either. The woods were thick and impenetrable, and the mood was non-existent. My team was walking through the woods when all of a sudden we could see what looked like torches in front of us, little orbs of light just floating in the distance. We turned and looked at each other, obviously worried we were about to meet insurgents in this pitch blackness. That's when the whisper started happening. It really didn't make sense to me. It sounded like the trees were talking because it was coming from everywhere. I couldn't make out anything they said, but it was different for Vasya. However, he called out, "Papa, what do you mean you want me close to you?" He started taking off into the forest. And when I mean taking off, dead sprinting toward those lights. He dropped his rifle and stripped off all his gear and proceeded to run through the brambles and bushes like they didn't matter. The 3 of us were barely keeping up with him as he continues to yell for his father, asking if he is cold and hungry. We finally caught up to him. He just stops in this small clearing in the forest at the edge of a peat bog. He falls to his knees, looks at us and says, "I'd like to go home now." We drag him back to our camp and explain to our NCO in charge that why we were 30 minutes late. He just sends us to our beds and we lay in our bedrolls looking at each other in shock, trying not to cry. The villagers in many different places in Russia talk about fairy lights or kappers, which are lights that lead people to their deaths. It's kind of creepy. It's like some stalker level stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it seems like something took over this guy's mind.
Yeah. So it's basically like, basically I would describe it to me. There's like Russian folklore talks about these spirits that basically try to convince you to go walk into the bog and lead you to your death, or swamps and stuff like that. And so when he stopped at the peat bog, it seemed like when they caught up to him, whatever was possessing him stopped. I don't know. It was really weird. He said it was definitely an experience that left him shaken. And he's like, if I hear voices in the woods now, when I started hearing stuff in the woods again, he would turn around and leave.
Wow. And that happened in Russia.
That happened in Russia. So I was in Chechnya.
Gotcha. Wow.
So this next story he has is from Mongolia, and I find this one super interesting too. You can kind of see where this one's going. Okay. Another training exercise I was on was with the Mongolian and the Kazakhstani army. It was me walking around the desert for a month, wondering when I was going to die of heat stroke. There was a point when our groups were walking around these pumice sandstone hills. If you don't know, pumice is a very porous stone with natural holes showing through. And after enough time and rain, these holes get big enough to fit a small man or dog through. On a night watch, I was on a giant cord machine gun. We had these IR thermals attached to them, and I was scanning, more or less really sleeping, the terrain. When I see what appears to be the thermal image of one of those inflatable tube men without arms, you know, the kinds that you see at car dealerships in the US that wave around. It's about 100 meters out on the slope of a hill. I blink and close my eyes. When I open and look through again, I see this thing moving side to side, just like one of those giant inflatable tube men, but with no arms. I decide to turn on the floodlight attached to our cord, and for a split second, I see this massive fucking caterpillar about the size of a horse. It's poking out of one of those large holes in the pumice, and it slinks back down when I shine a light on it. I remember in vivid detail this thing. It was the same amber color as a cockroach. I counted 8 limbs from what I saw, but I can only guess that maybe what I was only seeing was a quarter of the length of this thing. Its face, if you want to call it that, looked like one of those wood grubs. I shot in legitimate surprise. I turned around and there's a Kazakh soldier watching me. He probably exclaimed that I had seen a quote unquote Mongolian death worm. And to be honest, I have no explanation for what it could have been otherwise. Yeah.
What the heck? What the heck?
This dude was like, yeah, I know what I saw. I was not hallucinating.
Wow. That's weird. That is so weird. So the best he could describe was a giant caterpillar. Yeah,
he said that's what it looked like. And when he said he talked to the Kazakh soldiers and the Mongolian soldiers it was in an undisclosed location in Mongolian desert or somewhere out there. And they basically were like, oh yeah, we see these things all the time. And it's kind of makes me laugh because it's just like wildlife at any other military base, right? Like for example, the pigs in Hawaii, right? They will run away if they see you, Tony, walking up to them because they're scared of people. But if they see the uniform, if they specifically see the Army OCP uniform, they are so used to soldiers, they do not care. They're like, oh, whatever.
Really?
Yeah, they will walk right up to you thinking you're going to toss them food because people feed them. Like they have no fear of you. You have to like kind of make some noise to get them to go away. Which I always find it funny. I'm like, what are these things out there living in the training areas? They're like, oh, look, it's a soldier. I don't even really care.
Wow.
But yeah, those are two unique stories, I think, coming out of like the Russian armed forces. Very unique individual, an individual who surprisingly, there's people like him that serve in foreign militaries and then come to the United States, pass their background checks, and then join up in the armed forces.
That's incredible. Wow. I don't even know what to say to that. I mean, that's so bizarre. Right?
Such a good story. Both of them.
Great story. It really shows, like with some of these stories you're sharing, it just shows that the bizarre stuff is not constrained to any one country. I mean, it's all over the place. Yeah. And I'll have one more foreign one here and then we'll get back to like United States. But I'm always looking for foreign ones. Ironically, when I first started the page, I had a lot of, not ironically, but really cool. I had a lot of New Zealand soldiers following me. And they would tell me about Galatos Barracks or Wairo training area, which is like infamous because it's like the starting base for most soldiers in New Zealand, but it's also supposedly supremely haunted, has like all sorts of stories surrounding it. I always love listening to foreign stories. Just I always find that even though militaries are different, some things always stay the same. Yes. And then two, just like their perspective on things, Absolutely. There's quite a bit. But we'll get into another foreign one real quick. So this is from the British Army. This one's a little more simple, maybe. Okay, so this individual was in the British 40th Royal Marine Commandos. So I don't know if I'm not too familiar with British Army, but that's the unit he was in. So this was when he was in Afghanistan during the war. So we were on Herrick 7 in Afghan as young Marines in the 40th Commando Royal Marines. We were in Singin and tasked with taking ground at the forward edges of the fight lines. Marines would fight through these areas, taking ground, and the army would follow up behind them and build FOBs and patrol bases to hold this hard-won territory. This at the height of violence with the Taliban and IED activity. Lads were getting shot and blown up regularly. They were losing legs, arms, feet, and being killed. There are instances of the Taliban hanging body parts from the trees to scare troops in these certain areas. But through all this chaos, madness, and violence, we had loyal interpreters that risked their lives and families to be with us. They were out there in the area, but if they were found what they were doing with us, their families would be beheaded. To say that these guys were brave was an understatement. However, on a routine patrol, we came up onto a new village. As we approached the town, these same hardcore brave interpreters that have gone through hell and high water with us refused to go into the town with no explanation. After much arguing and threatening not to pay them for completing their job, they finally said that they would not enter the village because it was inhabited by evil gnomes that cursed and killed people. There are these short, dark-skinned little people that move quickly and look like angry little mad people. Although we didn't see anything, these interpreters would not enter the village, let alone look at it, and would quit their jobs if they had to go into that town. It was so strange. They had never backed down from a fight in the Taliban and routinely went through the shit with us. After all they had seen and been through, it makes me wonder how evil those gnomes could have been. It really makes you wonder. I mean, I've heard stories of gnomes and things like that. And when you put it in that light where, you know, these are guys who are going counterculture, they are putting their lives on the line, their families' lives on the line, going against Taliban, things like that. And they're scared of gnomes, you know?
Because I asked that guy, like, was it because they knew the Taliban were there maybe, or like Al Qaeda or something? And they were like, no. Like, he was like, these guys would like run through fire with us. Like, no hesitation. But when it came to this particular village, they refused to go anywhere near it. This is weirdness.
I mean, that it really, when you put the context around that story, it really puts some validity to it, because these guys really, and not just one guy, many people really believe there was just pure evil there, more evil than the evil they were fighting.
Yeah, like Afghanistan's a weird place, man. Like, I've never been there, but just hearing stories and talking to people that have lived and fought there, like, I think it's definitely a place that is hard to understand.
Yeah, I might need to visit someday. Nah, just kidding.
Yeah, it might need to take. I would wait a little bit, Tony.
Yeah, I think it might be maybe a slight miscalculation on my part. Okay, let's talk about our last sponsor for today's show, which is HelloFresh. And HelloFresh is a great thing for you right now, this time of year. You're after the holidays, and guess what you're trying to do? Like everybody else, you're trying to save money because you just spent a boatload of money on the holidays, and you're trying to lose weight because you just spent the entire holidays eating candy and junk food and tons of good food on the table for all these family gatherings. And right now, HelloFresh has a great deal for you, because not only are you going to be able to have menu items that are healthy to help you lose weight, lose the pounds that you just put on from the holidays, but HelloFresh is 72% cheaper than any restaurant meal, the same quality, and you can save on average about $65 a month when you use HelloFresh. We use HelloFresh. We absolutely love it. Not only is it saving money, not only is it great food, it helps you trim the fat, but it also saves you time when you're trying to make sure that you can get everything else done. It takes out the hassle. You just go to HelloFresh, you take out the meal, you make what they tell you to make, and you're good to go. Right now, friends, HelloFresh is offering one of the best deals I've ever seen them offer. You can go to HelloFresh.com/confessional16 and use code confessional16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. They're still giving stuff away. That's why I like them, because they give stuff away. I like giving stuff away. They give stuff away. They're giving you 16 free meals. It used to be 12, then they put it to 14. Now they're doing 16 free meals, and it's after the holidays, and they're still giving you 3 free gifts. So go ahead, check it out. HelloFresh.com/confessional16 and use code confessional16 to get your 16 free meals and 3 free gifts.
Okay, so this next story is from a Marine at Camp Lejeune, and I think it's pretty cool because it involves ghost tanks. All right, ghost tanks on Camp Lejeune. So I want to start off by saying that it was my second or third month in the Jacksonville, North Carolina area, and I just got stationed at Marine Corps Air Station New River. Still, I wanted to explore Camp Lejeune because I knew I'd have to go there from time to time to perform my duties. And so one night around midnight, probably a Friday or Saturday, I got in my car and headed over to Lejeune to kind of drive around and explore my way around the base. It's probably ended up around 3 a.m. when I decided to head back to my barracks. So I plug in my GPS. Long story short, I end up on one of those roads towards the base's old decommissioned gates. If you spend any time in the Onslow area, you know that the wee hours in the morning, you can get pretty foggy and creates an overall uneasy feeling. I realized my mistake, that I was heading towards a dead end, and I turned around and started heading back the way I came. At this point, my car starts to jump and shake. I guess it was one of those artillery battalions running a night op, shooting into the air close by. Well, anyway, I keep going down the road, and it's lined by streetlights maybe 100 feet or more apart, and they're illuminating the street through the fog just enough. All of a sudden, it feels like it feels like I'm on a drawbridge, like, everything's shaking. And I shit you not, 3 tanks about 300 feet away from me, vintage looking, maybe Vietnam era, come rolling from the tree line on the right, across the road and into the tree line on the other side of the road. They had men manning the turrets and everything. I could only make out the men from the shoulders up, but they were not wearing our modern Kevlars, and instead they looked like they had the old GI helmets with no covers on, the way that the streetlights reflected off the tops. So they were the bare metal, like that old bare metal. after they passed, I immediately thought that I might have accidentally ventured into a restricted part of the base, like on a range or something. Still, when I got to where they crossed, there were no signs of them. No muddy track marks. No, the tree lines were super dense. Nothing was knocked over. You couldn't even fit a squad through there without making at least hacking a couple of the trees down. I don't know what I saw, but those tanks and soldiers looked like they were straight out of Vietnam.
That, I guess, falls in line with the idea of the residual energy. I mean,
yeah, I mean, you have to like, and I found that story interesting because when he describes like the rattling noise, like, I don't know if you've ever been near tanks.
No.
Right. So like tanks are super noisy. Like anything with tracks makes like a ton of noise. It makes like this noise, like a clunking noise. And just tanks themselves are just super loud. And when they move, because they're so heavy, they'll shake the ground if there's enough of them. So like, it sounds like you saw like these legit tanks that just came rolling through. I know I found that was super interesting. I've never heard of ghost tanks before, but he swears up and down what he saw was those were tanks. I don't know. Maybe it was like a residual memory or something of the land or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but that's the best way I could describe it. I mean, tanks were never alive, so we know it's not a soul of a tank. You know, it's.
Yeah, I showed him a random picture from Vietnam of like dudes riding on top of a tank, like kind of like what he was describing with like the gear. And I was like, "Is this what you saw?" And I sent him like a couple other ones of like other different tanks from different periods, and he was like, "Nope, this is exactly what I saw. This exact same tank, this exact same style, rolling down the road." And it's like, you know, those things haven't been in Army. I think it was before even the M60, which was like around in like the Gulf War still. Like it has not been in the Army system for years, let alone the Marine Corps one. So I always wondered what it could have been.
Yeah, and so I mean, if that's the case, then even the idea of, you know, if just being an antique move, it probably wouldn't even be moved. If it was real, it probably wouldn't be something that would be movable. It would have to be stationary, not like it could just drive around.
Exactly. So I don't know, really weird story.
It's interesting.
All right. So the next one, we're going back to Iraq, and this one's super interesting. Not necessarily like creepy or spooky or anything, but I think puts a lot of like perspective onto some of the stuff that like some of these stories. So the background to this individual worked in intelligence and military intelligence, right? And they do a lot of analysis of like on cultures and stuff like that. It's probably one of their big jobs. So the story goes, back in 2009, the XO at a FOB asked me to report on the cultures and history of our surrounding area. And that FOB encompassed and protected an ancient ziggurat. Not sure why. Much of the sectarian stuff is disturbing fringe things. So sectarian meaning like the fringe groups, like some of that violence of like, they're not affiliated with Saddam, they're not affiliated with Al-Qaeda, they're like kind of out there on their own. So they were trying to figure things out, like who was who out there. My higher ups were also interested in the local small Jewish population as well in Iraq. The weird stuff that we found usually centered around a single dude, a mystic that was focused on the darker stuff. Mystic Islam isn't about the Quran as much as about a spiritual connection. Honestly, it looks closer to Hinduism than Islam in any way from what I found. Meditation, narcotics, trances, rituals to summon or become one with whatever. The crazy ones were focused their energy on summoning jinn, iblis, etc., other weird creatures. The funny enough, I tried to find more info. I couldn't keep the report I did, but Google sucks for research now. But all that will pop up is Yazidis, I can't pronounce that, which have their baddies too. They focus on Marduk, a couple other things. You want to dig into it. The source is physical evidence that shows Zoroastrianism does not predate Judaism, and it just predates the Jewish exile to Babylon. Also, since Islam is a relatively new religion, these are important details. The super important details because the diffusion of ancient cultures ties into the boogeyman origin stories of today. One of these days I'll have to get back into it, but the stories that pops out when you have all this info are engrossing. So going back, for instance, when I was in Iraq at this FOB, an Islamic fighter created a brigade of extremists, as in too messed up for their other extremists to associate with, i.e. they would kill their enemies, eat their hearts and livers. This way, they destroy their opposition and gain the power and knowledge of the person they murdered/killed. They validate this from a story where Hind, I guess from the Quran, ate the liver of Hamza, the companion of the Prophet of Muhammad. Those guys still consider themselves to be Muslims. You also have counterculture guys who see Islam as a corruption of an older, better, more powerful, i.e. better or more powerful religion. This goes back into where you're saying like Zoroastrianism and pre-Judaism cultures mixing with Islam. Cryptids, jinn, ghouls, etc. are whisperings of an ancient religion of the past. Usually, these ancient holdover pieces start blending with local and foreign beliefs. Inevitably, some nut with a dark past latches onto this stuff and tries to revive it. He is given or finds some secret knowledge that ties together with whatever ancient mystery he wants to use to validate whatever reason he's selling. The modus operandi of these guys is always the same thing, man. They seek validation, pleasure, influence, and power. When they focus on the darker spirits, things that get sick, things that get weird, I call these guys the anti-Muslims. They get off on doing all sorts of things Islam says is evil. They do rituals to summon these jinn beings, and these guys are pretty much like the otherworldly, worldwide variations of the Strigoi, fairy, and other, not so much like the genie Islamic view. These anti-Muslim guys want to channel these spirits to help them fight their enemies. They like the ones that target travelers and strangers, i.e. us. But these jinn are usually extra spooky and extra creepy. So these guys focus all their energy on connecting with that shit. Now, throw in a combat zone, various people stacking bodies on the regular for generations in a consolidated area, and it's no wonder I think our guys see freaky stuff out there. So basically, I know it's a lot to digest. Basically, this guy looking into weird fringe stuff at this fob that was around an ancient religious site, found out that there's like these groups of people that take Islam to an extreme, and then there's groups of people that like go the exact opposite way to the extreme, but they're blending ancient culture and religion together. And so his belief basically from this whole thing was that people that see the weird stuff in combat zones, people see like, you know, ghosts and apparitions. And like, I saw this demon looking thing peek around a corner on this village. He thinks that it's, you know, these people were summoning these creatures to come mess with us. You know, and whether or not they're getting the effect they wanted or not, or whether or not it's real, he just thinks that maybe that's why people saw like the weird things they did in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Wow. That's like a whole other new element to what is perceived to be going on over there. You know? Yeah.
And so I talked to some guys of Islamic faith, and they said that this is exactly spot on. It's like in Afghanistan and Iraq, this is exactly like correct. There's like these guys that take like this black magic kind of anti-Muslim thing. And then there's these guys that take like, you know, the Quran to a whole other level, you know, just like, they're like, this is exactly true. And both of them do like some type of occultish black magic kind of things to summon powers that they think will do their bidding. Really weird stuff.
So how, as somebody who's in the military, if that story's true, how do you think we combat that kind of stuff in the field?
Who knows, Tony?
He clears his throat. Hey, you know what? I have some guesses.
Hey. I mean, I don't know, Tony. I mean, I think a lot of soldiers themselves are very spiritual and religious too. Like, I knew people that had some very, very superstitious things and all sorts of religions and cultures in the U.S. military. I'm sure we combine our faith to prevent some of these things from happening. But yeah, no, that would be an interesting thing. It reminds me of like a book I read a while back about it. Oh, no, okay, I'm thinking of Hellboy. Never mind.
Close.
Yeah, but no, I always find it interesting because there's definitely, as much as people want to pretend like religion is not a thing and is fake and made up, like, you know, I'm a guy of a certain faith that I believe all this stuff is real.
Yeah, well, me too. It just makes you wonder if you're getting stories through your Instagram page like that, surely we know all about it, you know? And it's like, well, how do you approach that then? Because I mean, I'm firmly convinced that, you know, our military, government, things like that, they're not ignorant to the idea of black magic being real. And so
I'm sure. I mean, like, I'm sure, Tony, like there's, I can think that if there was anything that could be used against us or used for us, we're going to look into it.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, as anyone would, like That's the one. If there's some world altering power, you can best believe we're probably going to figure out how to harness it before someone else can. Like, you know what I mean? Or at least try to figure out, is it any threat to us? I don't know. It sounds very Hollywoodish, but I feel like that's just human nature to begin with.
No, I agree. We'll leave it there. I won't pry too much because I'm trying to be a good soldier for you.
Oh God, Tony.
Okay. I'm not trying to get you in trouble, man. Like, I don't want to egg you into conversation that could get you into trouble.
Well, unfortunately, Tony, I would say everything I would talk to you about is just stuff from my own research and belief. I don't unfortunately have any. I don't know where the skeletons are buried out there.
No, but I don't want you to come across as agreeing with some of the accusations I could pitch.
Yeah, I really hope people paid attention to my disclaimer in the front.
Yes, and that goes for me too. Like, my opinions are not Nick's opinions. Oh man,
all right.
Where are we at here?
Okay, so here's this next one from Fort Huachuca, right? So if people don't know, Fort Huachuca is out in New Mexico. It's where the Army trains a lot of their intel people, a lot of signal guys. It's mainly like a training base. All right, so this guy recounts the time he saw a UFO out there 2 times. Okay, so there were 2 times that had happened in the day and 2 times at night. If anyone has ever been to Fort Huachuca, they know that the long PT road that takes them to the airport gate and the mountain base. This road is pretty long, and many battalions do their fair share of running, rucking, and PT tests on it. One morning, we had been doing a team run, and we were running down the road towards the airport. My team leader and I usually had a similar pace, and so we'd always run together. We had seen this black disc come down from the clouds way out from the far mountain range towards Tucson. This thing has to be making time because of how quickly it got from one side of the range to the other in a matter of seconds. As soon as it started moving over the mountains, we heard the F-22s from the airport picking up, start up, and take off. It was pretty apparent that these guys were taking off and chasing this thing. The other range is about 90 to 120 miles away, and that's from where we are in the Sierra Vista. Anyways, by the time these pilots had responded to it, it was already moving back up into the atmosphere. This all had to happen within like 2 to 3 minutes. And the second time is when we were in formation closeout, waiting for our sergeant major to start talking. I had been looking up, memorizing the clowns, just like as any board specialist would do. And I had noticed this silver disc was moving at such weird angles to match the form of the clouds. I pointed this out to another guy next to me. We were both watching it as other clouds had moved in below, blocking our view, and we never saw it after that. The first time we had seen the lights at night was when we would sit in the back of my truck, drink, and talk about watching the lightning storms over Tucson in the distance. The stars were bright, but we had been out there all night, almost drinking every night, and then we knew something was different. This night, we were talking as usual, not drinking, and we had seen these green and orange lights flashing in the distance, moving fast and coming to a stop. We looked up what airplane lights they could be on their wings, but it wasn't matching up to anything we could find. That was the first weird thing, that these lights would hover in an area outside of the storm for about another 15 minutes before shooting up and out of sight within the blink of an eye. All we saw was a stream of light that something makes when it moves really fast, stupid fast. We both had agreed that it was weird and continued our conversation. The last experience I had would be when I was out in the field shooting comms. We ran 24-hour comms, switching parameters on our net ops to make sure everything was fully functional. We had seen another light come down, this time in a circular motion over the border with the U.S. airspace. It wasn't too far away from us, but we were watching with big eyes. It was just hovering near the blimps for a few minutes. Intel uses like kind of blimps to gather intelligence signals, stuff like that. So that's what he was working on.
Okay.
It was flashing colors like the last one. This time it was just a blue light, but super brighter than anything I've ever seen. At the same time it had come down, we had lost signal and radio comms, so we couldn't even call to the other teams who had been closer to it on the other side of the valley. This time, instead of beaming back up to the sky, it just disappeared in the blink of an eye. So a couple of weird UFO sightings from Fort Huachuca.
And where is that again? Fort Huachuca?
New Mexico. Oh, sorry. Here's the rest of it. I'm sorry. I have to flip through my pages. So he goes on to say, we knew it had left because the signal had come back. Because his signal of the net ops had gone out when the thing appeared. We received a call from the officer on duty at the time, and we didn't know if we had a believable story, so we blamed it on a power issue. The 4 of us saw it and tried to get a video proof, but nothing could be made out except for the audio. We all passed it off as just another weird thing about Arizona without ever speaking of it again. The Air Force has done a lot of exciting stuff out there about the one airline that goes into Area 51? We had this thing land there one time on our tiny runway. We're never seen anything more significant than A-10s and F-22s land there before. So when I saw this giant commercial flight, I thought it was bizarre. That's the end of it.
That is interesting. Why would a giant commercial flight land there?
Yeah, I think it's called Comet or something like that. It's like a government contracted flight, and it's known. It's like one of those cargo movers, and it's known, I guess, for taking people to Area 51 or just moving people to some of these sites outside in the desert. From what I've been able to gather online, not too familiar with that too much, but yeah, it's weird stuff in the desert.
Do you think that that's more than likely our own stuff that we're working on, that it's just top secret, so you're not going to know what you're looking at?
Who knows? I mean, I definitely could say that if we ever wanted to test our own stuff out, the best people to do it against would be us, I guess, because, if we're imagining we're the toughest guys on the planet, then of course we want to fight the toughest guys on the planet. I just don't know. I know the U.S. in history, if you look up like, I forgot what they're called, but when the first Navy SEALs came around, they created a team that they would go around. They would basically like attack and infiltrate military bases to test themselves, right? Because if we're the best, then the best should be fighting the best, quote unquote. So I could imagine maybe some of the stuff is just tech that we have out there, especially in all the test ranges and airfields and just massive amount of empty space in the desert in Arizona and Mojave and stuff like that. Maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
So what are your thoughts on the idea that we have craft that didn't originate from Earth? I mean, from what I understand, our government did say that recently. What do you think?
Yeah, that was weird. I have no idea what to put on that, because I was like, this is not exactly what I was expecting. I don't know, but it goes back to what I said earlier. If we have something, what does everyone else have? Because like you said, this stuff and these stories and activity are not just synonymous with the United States. It always makes me wonder. I think it would be, we are not just like some fluke of nature that we're the only planet to develop life. I'm sure that there's stuff out there, and maybe they're just like what we would do when we discover, like, if we would ever go, like, say, to Pluto and discover there's life on Pluto, what we do, we would probably like, take a step back, like, let's check this out, because we were not expecting this. We thought we were alone. I would imagine they're maybe similar to us in that regards. Like, you know what I mean? If they were truly an advanced civilization that could steamroll us, why haven't they done it yet? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely a valid argument. Yeah, it's interesting. There's so many things that I think about when it comes to that stuff. Like the Eisenhower deal. I mean, is that real? Did it actually happen? Knowing what we know now, as far as UFOs go and things that the government's saying now, is it possible that this whole conspiracy theory of Eisenhower making a deal with extraterrestrials? I mean, nowadays, with what our government says now, if you said Biden made a deal with extraterrestrials, you're like, well, we are talking to them. We do have access to their craft and things like that. So it makes you wonder if the Eisenhower deal is something that actually did happen.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll find out. Maybe we're not. Maybe they're not like this advanced civilization. Maybe they're refugees that have finally come across a habitable planet. I don't know. Like, I love science fiction. I love reading about that stuff. Maybe science fiction becomes science reality one day. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, I think that's starting to happen, my friend. I think that's starting to happen.
We'll see. So other disclaimer is, I get a lot of people that do message my page with some very outlandish things that aren't in the military, and they give me a lot of dates like this. The world should have ended as of yesterday or something like that. And I'm like, well, still here, guys. So I think a lot of this stuff too, there's a lot of people that put out their, uninhibited opinions as fact and kind of disrupt the whole thing. It makes it really hard to weed through that mass of like what's real and what's not.
Yeah, I totally get it. Let's get to some of the Skinwalker stuff.
All right, let me skip ahead here. All right, so this is at Fort Benning, right? So these last two are kind of like Skinwalker stories, and we get, I guess, into the overtime. I picked some other ones out that people claim to be Skinwalkers, and I have some ones that I haven't posted yet. So this first one is from Fort Benning. So we didn't know anything about Fort Benning. Fort Benning is in Georgia. It's a huge Army training base. They have basic training, airborne, ranger school, big base, right? A lot of training area, a lot of land people go run around in. So this story is from a guy in OCS. Also, I found that in a lot of these stories, like people start sharing the same kind of encounters and stories from the same place. Makes you really wonder, like, maybe it's not just a drill sergeant messing with people. Maybe,
that's an interesting.
Maybe it's something else there. So this guy tells a pretty interesting story. Okay. So I was in OCS doing the dreaded Styx lanes. It was early on in the week, so we were pretty well rested before we settled into our patrol base for the long night of 50% security. Around 0200, we started hearing coyotes, which sounded like a whole band of them making that unnerving yippee noise, which isn't common in Fort Benning. The wildlife regularly stumbles across our patrol bases. But this time it started giving me chills up my spine, and it sounded like they were circling us. It goes quiet, and a couple peaceful and silent minutes pass. The student platoon leader started checking security, making sure everybody who was supposed to be awake was awake. When he came back, a man was leaning against a tree. Thinking it was an officer candidate, he started asking, "Hey, officer candidate, what are you doing standing?" Because everybody's supposed to be like prone position, hidden, right, in the patrol base. The LT gets no response, and then it dawned on him. He just checked the whole gun line, and everybody was present and accounted for in their positions. "Who are you and what are you doing here?" he exclaimed, and he asked this question again and got no response. If you know anything about patrol base, you know that it's one way in and one way out, and a password and a guard guards it. There's no way some rando could just walk in without knowing the password, and there's no way 50% security would have missed him walking through. So that means like if there's 100 people, everybody's paired up into twos, right? And then so those 100 people now spread out in a circle, and out of those 100 people, 50 of them are awake. So there's 50 eyes looking in the forest. So it's pretty hard to infiltrate it, like just walk straight through it. So going back to the story. So all of a sudden, the man started walking straight out of the observation post. All I remember is that he had these very heavy footsteps. After that, something in the fort. Sorry, let me back up. I kind of tongue twister there.
That's cool.
After he walked out of the patrol base, all I remember hearing that he had these very heavy footfalls. After that, I started hearing something in the forest, like something that would move between the bushes, and I would start to see like a shadow of something staring at us. The following day, we got back to the talk, which is basically like kind of like a command post. I noticed that cadre was present all night, and they had a cot set up, like they had like just woken up, like they had been asleep all night. I was pretty close to the guy that was there for the night, and I asked him, "Hey man, were you messing with us last night?" He responded, "Hell no, it was way too cold. I was sleeping in the ammo shed." Then we asked around to asked if any of the platoons had been messing with us. No one could even point out where we were that night because we were that well hidden. I don't know if what it was or how it got there. That's it. That's the story. I'm not embellishing anything or making shit up. It's just what happened. Like most real life events, I never got any answers or any big reveals. So it's just going to remain unanswered for the rest of my life. But just to go back into some detail, I was manning the 249 at the Apex, so I heard him stomping around. The PL described him as tall, about 6'3", which is weird because none of our cadre were over 6 feet tall. And the only other guys above 6'3" were the gate guard and me. The PL said that he stunk, but I don't really chunk that up to anything because after all, if you're in the field, you stink. And he was wearing a gaiter, I guess like a net gaiter, which is, I guess, I don't know why that's significant, but I guess that's what he was wearing. And he was wearing a patrol cap, which was also weird because all of us on the patrol base were wearing helmets. And his flag was on the wrong shoulder and there was no unit patch. We wore the infantry school patch. So on an Army uniform, you would wear your flag patch on your right shoulder. And then if you had a deployment, the unit you deployed would go beneath that. But then on your left shoulder, you would have like your unit patch to distinguish yourself. So this guy had his patch on his left shoulder and he was wearing the wrong unit patch there as well. So it just was looking messed up. And when I started seeing stuff in the bushes, I was only catching like glimpses of it. And when we watched him move out, it was like he was walking uncomfortably, like he was moving on 2 feet. Like it was uncomfortable for him. So I don't know what could have been. I grew up in Flagstaff, Arizona, in Skinwalker territory. The Navajo are adamant that the Skinwalkers only exist inside their tribe, but shapeshifter stories are pervasive down in Georgia too. I'm not sure who or what it was, but it seemed like it was impersonating a soldier and getting a lot of things wrong. I think they got the Goat Man or some other type of thing. I think, and also important to note here, I've accidentally skimmed over it. The guy was in ACUs. So if you don't know what ACUs are, it's like that funky looking green digital camo the Army used to have.
Yeah.
So when this guy was in OCS, we had switched over to OCPs. So it's that more of that multi-cam looking color. So also like kind of wait a minute. And I'll get into that in a second. All I know is skinwalkers are people, medicine men who practice like dark things to intimidate people they don't like. Whether you believe they shapeshift at all, they do exist. From my experience living in Arizona, the skinwalker is more of a practice than a cryptic. The lore goes deeper and it's more supernatural, but the most rational Navajos stop at that point. Skinwalkers are simply humans trying to be animals, but this was different. It felt like it was something trying to be human and failing pretty bad. Maybe it's my background or something, I don't know, but it just seemed off, like that uncanny valley crap. I don't think there's a cryptid on the books to describe it, but I do think there's a reason why the uncanny valley evolved in humans. A lot of people hear these stories of creatures chasing them and seem off, right? They go, oh, it's a skinwalker, but I don't think that's accurate. What I saw and what I'm describing is more like a predator that evolved from us. It uses like its intellect to lure us and kill us. Maybe it's learning to speak with us. It learns to understand our mentalities, but I don't think they're shapeshifters. I think they're like mimics that they try to pretend like us, but they sometimes like fail. It's hard to get evidence for them because they're exactly like us. But if you look at serial killers, the pathology and brain chemistry are just way different. Maybe it's just part of that mutation that makes them these things. So what's funny about that story is like, I get a lot of stories about people seeing soldiers that are outside of their little area that wear the wrong uniform, have the wrong stuff on, have out of characteristics uniform, like they're wearing the winter gear in like summer heat. Or they like are standing weird, walking weird. And I just found that kind of interesting. I don't know if you want to, like he said, he doesn't think it's a skinwalker. He's under the idea that there's something else that we're mistaking for a skinwalker. And it's like this thing that's trying to like trick us and mimic us. Cause I get a lot of stories from Fort Benning about tall, weird things that look like humans, but when you get a closer look are not humans.
That's interesting. I wonder what that is.
Fort Benning is weird, man. I don't know.
The way he described it, where like he was walking, but it felt uncomfortable walking, trying to walk like a human and stuff. The imagery in my head pops up of the movie Men in Black with Will Smith, the first one, where the alien's wearing the Edgar suit and he's walking real weird and stuff because he can't figure it out.
And what's the funny thing is too, is like they're wearing OCPs, right? And like OCPs are like one of the most hated camo patterns ever because it stands out, it doesn't blend in, and like when the Army got rid of it, the only way you're going to find it now is on like old gear that they issue out to you. And for the most part, if people want to pretend like they're the bad guys, right, they're going to wear like the old woodland camos. It would make it very obvious, right? So I found that really weird that these things go into the clothing in the old, vintage store and bought a bunch of ACUs thinking like, oh yeah, this is how I'll look like them. And they get out there and realize that everybody else is wearing something different. I don't know. Oh, 6'3" though. This is a big guy.
Yeah, it's pretty big. It's pretty big. I don't know. That's really interesting though. I would love to know more details of those experiences guys are having there. I mean, that's really interesting.
Yeah, especially at Fort Benning, that's a pretty common one. I've gotten like at least 4 or 5 other ones like that. Like really tall figure that looks like it's human, but it doesn't quite seem right. Or like its arms are too long, or its legs bend too strangely. Yeah, Fort Benning's one of those weird places. It's like Fort Polk, some weird stuff.
Wow.
So we'll get into this next story. And so this was a more recent one I got. So this is about a guy's dad. When he was in Afghanistan, he saw something I thought was really weird that I've also connected to some other stories I've gotten. So it starts off with my dad. He is on watch in this deserted village on the top of a mountain facing north. He and his group are situated at a wall overlooking this village. Along the village, there's this other wall. Now, this wall has doors leading up to a small square spaces, which are most likely homes. This is about roughly 30 to 40 feet, so keep that in mind. So my dad is mounted on this wall, and he's looking in the valley they're situated on. He has a 50 cal on a turret of some kind. I can't recall what he said, but I do know it was a 50 cal. He's also got NVGs and other night vision equipment with thermals. I don't really know the correct terms for this, so bear with me. But he is sitting there on the wall, and he sees this man through his thermals walking down a mountain about 500 meters from his group. This is unusual because it's 2 to 3 in the morning, and this man is just casually walking around this abandoned village at 2 in the morning. He sees him and starts closely watching him. He says as this man turns and very obviously begins to look at him, But as he looks at him, he just keeps walking. But he's walking weirdly. And as he keeps walking, it gets more weird to the point he drops on all fours. And my dad swears he turns into a whole panther, complete with tail. He thought he was sleep deprived since they had spent all night driving to get there. He rubbed his eyes and he's trying to wake his buddy. He called his buddy named Cooter, as well as his first sergeant on his first deployment. So he's throwing these discarded caliber rounds at his group to get him to wake up, but they're not waking up. He looked through his NVGs again or something, and he saw this thing jump onto the wall. When it jumped on the wall, it was about 60 to 100 meters away from him. He starts yelling, and the guys woke up, and he told them what he saw. They're all laughing at him and telling him he just saw things, but he knew what he saw, and he stood by it. The next night, though, was his friend's turn, and he sees the same thing, but it got closer. So his friend Cooter woke up my dad, and that's when he said he saw it. And they were both freaking out, and they both knew that they had seen some type of panther down there. So what's interesting about that story that I like is in the very beginning of the page, I got a bunch of stories about people who had seen black panthers in Afghanistan. So Afghanistan does have endemic snow panthers. They're super, super rare. But like, and they're super, super hard to find. They live up in the mountains, but people were reporting like black panthers in like Chuck Valley and like some other places. Supposedly some people I got pictures of it haven't really got a chance to look at those yet, but I always wonder when I saw that story, I was like, huh, maybe it wasn't a cat. Maybe it was a cat of some type.
That is interesting. So did Cooter see the panther turn from like, do the transformation, or did he just see the Black Panther? Did he say in the?
He just saw the Black Panther like on the wall, but it was closer. So that wall that was like 20 to 30 feet from them, he saw it like down on the edge, like, oh shit, it's coming at me right now.
Jeez. That's crazy.
Weird stuff.
So collecting these stories, man, has all the stories that you've been collecting changed your mindset as to what you once perceived to be either fictional or real? I mean, has your perspectives changed at all by getting so many stories?
Oh yeah, I could definitely say, I've always had an interest in this stuff, like, but I have always approached it with a skeptic view. Like disclaimer, I take all these stories as they're told to me. So like most of the time I could tell when somebody's trying to pull a fast one on me because the story doesn't make sense with anything military would do. Like, there was a story about a guy. He's like, oh, I saw like these CIA type of people driving black Suburbans in Afghanistan. I'm like, really? Like, you're in one of the most dangerous places in Afghanistan and people are driving black Suburbans. Like, this isn't the movies, guy. Like, nice one. And I also have read plenty of creepypastas in green text to know, like, yeah, I've read this before. This was on No Sleep, where it was very obvious it was fiction. So nice one. But for the most part, people that come forward with stories, I do wholeheartedly believe them. And it's definitely changed my perspective on things because it makes me go back and think like, like, some of these places I was at too. And we could talk about that later, but like some of these places I was at too. And I remember like, there's some weird stuff there for sure. So there's definitely something to it. I haven't had anything too outlandishly crazy that's like blown my mind to make me like question everything. But I do appreciate members, and I want people to know in the military communities, like, that have seen weird things they can't explain, that you're not alone, and like there are people that believe you and want to hear your story. So I just hope that message gets to people and they understand that. I just hope it's also interesting for everyone else so they can hear these stories. Just because like you said, it's kind of hard for military people to open up to non-military, and I'm hoping that this will be that way so people can have that shared experience and learn from those shared experiences.
That's awesome, man. Let people know what the Instagram is once again.
It's Tales from the Grid Square. So at Tales_from_the_grid square.
Awesome, man. People need to go to that Instagram and hit follow and read these stories. I mean, you have tons on there right now. And you said to me you have what, like months worth of posts that you haven't even posted yet?
Yeah, I think if I look at my phone right now, I have enough for. So they come and go. I've been going through them pretty quick. So I think right now, because I try to keep it down to 2 posted days to give the people what they want. I got 48, 50. I have 64 stories to still post.
That's awesome, man.
The more people that follow, the more people that can submit. That's what I want. I'm not making any money off of this, so this is just kind of like a crazy hobby now that I've started.
Perfect, man. All right. Well, listen, I appreciate you being here for the first segment. If you're a member, you know what to do. Head on over to the Overtime because there's a whole other conversation waiting there for you. Thanks, Nick.
Awesome. Thank you, Tony. Thanks for having me on.
Well, that's the show, everybody. I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did enjoy, please share the show with your friends. I don't care where or how you share the show. Just share the show if you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for being here. Thanks for listening on a weekly basis, friends. And if you're a member, head on over to the Overtime section right now because there is a whole other conversation waiting for you. And to just let you know, we are bringing Nick back on for a third segment this coming Thursday for the members episode because he just had a ton of things to share. And I'm really glad that he was willing to share with me. So go ahead and check out the Overtime section and also check out the member show that's coming this Thursday with more of these tales from the Grid Square. Awakened from the forest in the depths of the abyss, this creature is a paradigm of time lost and time itself. It fears no one. It adheres to no rule that man can create. It forges its own path, and yet its path remains hidden from the world. The sphere of its existence is beyond most comprehension as it exudes its power quietly but transcendent. It needs no one's approval to exist, but yet its very existence is sought after by many. It watches. It learns. Adapts to the ever-changing environment around it, even as the environment is wrought with corruption. It battles the corruption only when pressed or for the protection of others like it. It is a mirage that few will ever understand. It's a cornucopia of knowledge from an era long past. It's free. It's Bigfoot.
My fantasies always consisted of making it big. My soul was nothing more than a bargaining chip. Marketing is what they tell you to do and what you're willing to give. LARPing to the fullest extent. I don't wait, I shoot first like Han on a roadian. These people don't understand me like reading a Nokian. Stretched thin, like pulling an accordion. My heart ain't primordium. All these historians telling us lies, setting aside. Everything is medicalized. Politicians selling the ride. I bet 'em a die where the relevance lies. They dressing alike reptilians. My resilience is brilliant. I'm here to lead the rebellion on Hellion, salient, alien with no melanin. I'm a Yeti, ain't hiding from Armageddon. Come and find me, I ain't even hiding. We ain't the same, I play no games. You do not know me, I don't hold back, I just speak facts. You cannot hold me. I'm under pressure, oh, take back your structure. No, I ain't going down, I want another round. I'm acting like Bigfoot. They want to take me away. I'm in my own zone today. I say whatever I say. You ain't got to like it anyway. We ain't the same. I play no games. You do not know me. I don't hold back. I just speak facts. You cannot hold me. I'm under pressure. Oh, take back your structure. No, I ain't going down. I want another round. I'm acting like Bigfoot. Yeah. I'm a legend like Bigfoot. Yeah. Come find me in the woods.
Hey, thanks for watching the Confessionals on YouTube. If you like what you heard, hit the subscribe button, hit the share button, and hit the like button. That would be a great help to me. And if you want more of the Confessionals on a weekly basis, every Thursday I come out with a special show just for members on my website. So if you want to check that out, go to theconfessionalspodcast.com, hit the join button, and become a member today. And every Thursday, you'll get a new show, and you can binge on previous shows, which there's almost 100 of them. So if you love the show, go ahead and check it out. But thank you very much for being here on YouTube and checking out the channel.